listening to Sin's Workshop. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, welcome to my December reading wrap up. You know what? I don't think I don't even remember what my goal was for December, but I can tell you my goal for the year was 75 books, and I read 130. So I'm going to be really proud of myself for that. I did manage to read 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 books in December. I already knew that I wasn't going to read everything I wanted to read because, with holidays and family, my God, I was exhausted. I took like 2 afternoon naps, one on Christmas Day and one on New Year's Eve. I was just exhausted. Between work and then, home life, you can only imagine. So, in any case, I am proud of what I was able to read, so let's just discuss what I got read, shall we? My first book was The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. I've already read a book by Crystal Sutherland, House of Hollow, so I was somewhat familiar with the author's writing style. This was still not what I expected. I did find it engaging. I did enjoy it. It really was creepy and unsettling, and it was something different. It was something unpredictable for the most part. I don't really know how I feel about it, if that makes sense. I liked it. It was a lot of weird things, which I enjoy. I do enjoy weird and the strange and unusual. So it really was an interesting read, and I will end with that. It was an interesting read. If you like House of Hollow, definitely I do want to say pick up this book. It is witchy. It is dark for sure. It is dark. It does have a menacing tone to it, but it's unsuspecting, and I'll leave it with that. Next up, A Stepping and Drowning. So I have read Ava Reid before. I read her adult fantasy, Juniper and Thorn, which, as much as I like it, I do find myself saying, it's not for everyone, that book, not at all. So I was a little hesitant when I was going to read her debut young adult book. I liked it way more than her adult. She definitely has a distinct writing style and a distinct tone that I was able to be like, oh yeah, this is definitely Ava Reid. Like, this is her identity right here. It has a sense of etherealness to it. Her female characters do tend to sound similar. When I think back to Juniper and Thorn, I'm like, she does sound a lot like her. It was still a really good book. I do like. It's dry. It is dry. I will say that. It's dry, but it has an etherealness to it, if that makes sense. It feels almost like a fairy tale, not like a grim fairy tale, but it does seem like that tone, that atmosphere, the fogginess. It does seem like a fairy tale in a sense, and that's really what I liked about it. I also like that a read is not explicit in the sexual abuse that your main character has had to deal with. You definitely know she's done things. You definitely know that her advisor took advantage of her. You just don't know the specifics of it. You just know that it has left her somewhat traumatized. And I like that she's able to get that across without being explicit. So I do appreciate her writing style. I don't know that it is for everyone because it is a little dry, but again, it's ethereal. So I liked it for that reason. Here's another one, A Far Wilder Magic. This is also another one that was really ethereal on Alison Saft. I didn't know what I was getting into when I was reading it. I do love your main characters, though. Between Margaret and Weston, she's so prickly, and I really like that about her. She's so prickly. She picks her battles. She has mixed blood, and in her village town, they do tend to be somewhat bigoted and racist against her. And she has a mom who is like an absentee mom. She's a workaholic. She's an alchemist. She's always traveling. She's never home for her daughter. And they did suffer some trauma with the loss of her little brother, which further kind of made a rift between them. But I like how headstrong she is, and I like how quickly she is, and I like her personality and how she grows and develops throughout the narrative. And I like how Weston, he's just like, I'm going to be an alchemist, and he's like a go-getter, and he's always like really optimistic and a flirt and charming. He's the complete opposite of her, but he also has really good work ethic, and he has a high level of respect for her. And I like how he treats her, and I like how they learn to treat one another, and I like how they learn to help one another, and really they are quite charming together. So that relationship that develops, it goes from very prickly to okay, we're gonna be friends to okay, let's do the romance. I like when authors really develop a friendship between the characters before just going to like, yeah, we're gonna jump each other's bones. Like I like seeing that friendship, which is why I don't really read a whole lot of romance, because it's usually just point A to point B, and I'm like, I like seeing the relationship develop between characters, and here you got to see that relationship develop between these two characters. A Drop of Venom. Let me just tell you right now, this is a retelling of Medusa, and it's like an Indian spin on the tale of Medusa. And let me just tell you right now, it was so powerful. And again, this is another one where Patel, they're not explicit. You know Medusa, she was raped by Poseidon, so you know what's going to happen in this book. Honestly, when you read this book, please read the foreword by Rick Riordan and the author of this book, because it's very powerful. It does give you some insight into the book, and it tells about what is a monster, who really is the monster, and just again, it's not explicit, but you know it's happening, and it broke my heart reading that scene, even though again, everything that goes in your head when something like that happens to you, like just the sense of violation, was translated on the page in such a wonderful way to really capture that, violation. But it was really thoughtful, and it was really thought provoking in the way the novel progressed, and the way the pacing, her storyline, because there's two storylines. You have her storyline, and it kind of starts back here, past. And then you have the hero. He's not the one who raped her. The hero, who is in love with her. You have the hero storyline going in present. So you have hers, and they're moving, and then they meet, and it's really, really interesting how the story developed and how that pacing was done. And I really did take a lot from it. I'm excited for the sequel. I'm excited for this book to get the attention that it totally deserves. It was just an absolutely spectacular novel, and I highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. For Found Dead, I should have just put this book on my DNF list. I should have. I just didn't get it. This is supposed to be a young adult mystery thriller. It follows a group of teenagers. Their movie theater is shutting down, and it's part of this abandoned mall. It's the last remaining thing open in this mall, and they're shutting it down for the last time. Everyone went and saw their movies here for the last time, so they're closing up so that it can be ready for demolition, right? And then their manager is kind of a dick. You get the sense that something happened between the manager and your main character, but nothing on that note is ever developed. And he's hunting them through the mall. But why? I mean, I just don't get a lot of his motivation. And she tells you in like the third chapter, yeah, you know who the killer is right away. And I'm just like, but why would you spoil that? I think I would have enjoyed the story more if it was just like he goes missing and maybe you find something of his to kind of like misdirect you to think like, oh, something happened to him. Because someone does come after him, come for him like early on in the night, like his crazy kind of wife. So I would have rather the story were written in a way where we think it's her hunting everyone, and then we find her dead body, which, by the way, we never see his wife die. We know she's dead because there is an interlude in the middle of the chapters. It's a news clipping telling us she's dead. Like, okay, that would have been way more creepy than telling us from the get-go that he is hunting them. And I just didn't get his motivation really much at all. He was just kind of like there. He was just like a dude. I'm like, I don't get it. It was so boring. It was so boring. I just toughed it out because it was like a quick read. I'm like, I should have just put this on my DNF list. Should have just put it on my DNF list. Next book of the year was of the month was a DNF book. It was Lore of the Wilde. This book had everything I thought I would love in Enchanted library, and you have Fae, and you have light Fae, and dark Fae, and you have lore. You know, she is this person of color, and she goes into this enchanted library because she wants to save her village because there was a earthquake, and I mean everything. It had the makings of something I would love. I'm gonna say this, and it's gonna sound harsh. It's like bad A Court of Thorns and Roses fan fiction. First of all, I stopped reading this book on page 140. Second of all, for the first 128 pages, it's a lot of nothing. It's her in the enchanted library, just organizing and cataloging the books. That's it. There's something eerie happening in this dark corner that the light never touches, but it took 100 pages for us to just get to that. And then page 128, I'm like, yay, finally something happens. And then it quickly goes back to nothing for the next 20 pages. And then they finally kiss, you know, her and the Fae she ran off with, because she's like, well, screw these Fae. They're, you know, double crossing me. It's just, this was me. I'm like sitting in bed and I'm just like, oh, I don't want to read this book. And my husband's like, then don't read it. And I'm like, but I've already invested 140 pages, which is half the book, by the way. I got to the halfway point. It's not a thick book. The fact that I read it for 5 days and I only got to page 140, that's a book. I showed everyone the book. They're like, yeah, Cynthia, you should have read this within 2 to 3 days. I'm like, right. You're right. I should have. That tells you my struggle. I couldn't keep going. I ended up just kind of like skipping here and there to see, you know, like, oh, well, let's see, does it get better? I gave it to my friends. I'm like, please read this and just tell me if I need to give it another shot or not. But I don't know. It was a DNF for me. I was so looking forward to it. I just couldn't. After a week, I'm like, I can't keep reading this. I can't. Life is too short to be reading things you don't enjoy. Okay to DNF books. It's okay. Luckily, after that, I read Our Divine Mischief. This was a much lighter book. It follows three. One of your point of views is a dog, and Oriole is so cute and precious, and I love her to death. I think she was my favorite point of view, this dog. And I like it because it's her as, you understand that this dog was created by a goddess. So the way it's point of view, it's like half stanzas, and then it becomes a little bit more poetic and lyrical before it becomes a full just storytelling. But I liked that. It was like nice and refreshing, and you're getting to see this really unique perspective. I did like Hugh and Ayla. I liked Hugh more than Ayla. He was nicer, I guess you could say. I'm trying to find the word for it. Charismatic. He was more charismatic. He was a hard worker. This is a town who sees him as unblessed because when he went to go do his trial with the goddess, she gave him an unmarked medallion, and it was just his town kind of treats him like garbage for that, but he's still there. He's still hard, working hard. He's being respectful. He's doing everything he can because he has high aspirations for himself, and he doesn't give up. He doesn't give up, and I really like that about him. Ayla, she's a little obnoxious in the beginning, but she grows. She does grow, which is a good thing. Her development, it was thought out. But Hugh and Oriel, they were my favorite parts of this book, and I did enjoy. It was light, especially after reading 2 books. I was just like kind of miserable through. It was nice to read something refreshing and kind of happier and lighter, and I did like the fantasy for it. All right, after that, my book club pick, Masters of Death. I get the hype for Olivia Blake now. I liked it. It's a lot of dark humor. It's a lot of dry humor. Lots of good good omens. Good omens vibes. Lots of Neil Gaiman vibes. Lots of point of views in this book. I will tell you that right now. You've got the Guardian Angel, the Reaper, Raphael, Gabriel, Death, Fox, Volos, the King of Demons, V, Tom Parker the Fourth. Sorry. Iris, and Brand, the Godling. So that's a lot of characters, but you're able to follow along really easily. There are some parts where it kind of feels like you're reading a screenplay or a script, but it made it more engaging and it made it more fun to read. And it was really easy to follow. I like how all the characters had their own distinct voice. It was very whimsical in a way. So I really did appreciate the book. I understand why people are just like, oh, Olivia Blake. I understand why she's taking off on TikTok. This book makes me eager to read her other books, which is great because I already own them. So I'm one of those people who buys books before I read them sometimes. I'm just like, let me see what all the hype is about. I'm like, oh, book 2's out. Let me just buy that one too so I have the whole series. I'm one of those people. Don't even know if I'm going to like them. But now I know I'm going to like her stuff because I liked Masters of Death so much. So, woo! Breath of fresh air there. Otherwise, I would have had to be like, sell. But it was a really good book. I definitely enjoyed it. It does have a lot of characters. But it's smooth. It's really fast paced and it's really engaging. Unholy Terrors. This is another one I wasn't really quite sure what I was expecting. I did like that slow burn forbidden romance. Slow burn enemies to lovers forbidden romance. Gina, you're gonna like this book. Between Everline and Ravel. Their chemistry and their dynamic and their whole way that their relationship developed, it really was engaging. I am not one for romance, but if you're going to do it right. It really was a dark fantasy. I really don't want to spoil it for you, but it moves at a really good pace. And this is one I listened to as an audiobook. Easy to follow, really engaging. I liked Everline as a character. Her half-sister was kind of a bitch. But she grows on you at least, and she's not even there for a lot of the time. And her best friend Lux. I loved her best friend Lux. Their whole relationship, like their sisterhood, ooh, those two girls would die for each other, and I love that so much. After that, I read Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I love how cozy fantasies are like becoming a thing. This is definitely a cozy fantasy. I will say it's a little dry. But you know, what's his name? Wendell. Wendell Bramble. I remember his last name. Brambleby. Uh, he was funny. He was charming. And then this is another one where Emily, I mean, she's a little prickly, but she reminded me a lot of Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory. She's kind of prickly in that sense that she doesn't really know how to read people. She's just like, I thought I did do everything right. She's like, no, you didn't. She's very oblivious. She's very much into her work, and that's what she wants to do. Fairies, she understands. People, not so much. And I like how it took place in like this alternate version of Pullman's, the Golden Compass, like that kind of Cambridge. She studies fairies, at Cambridge. She got her PhD. She has a lot of titles. And that's what she's doing. Like, she's continuing her study of fairies because she's going to make an encyclopedia of fairies. You do get to see a lot of fae here. There is lots of whimsy to the book itself. But these characters get into a lot of shenanigans. So I like her dry tone because it does balance out the humor in the story very, very well. And I did like those character dynamics. I mean, whenever Wendell has his own perspective in the story, it makes you laugh because he's like the polar opposite of Emily. It's just like, and then because you're reading her journal. Basically, this book is her journal. So, and he writes in her journal. She's like, well, you were unconscious. And I'm sure you're going to want to rip these pages out. But here we go. I know your meticulous mind is going to want all the details. So I'm going to include all of them for you. And then you have her. She's just like, a part of me wants to rip out these pages. But I am restraining myself for academic purposes. I mean, they balance each other out so well. It's really, really fun to read. And then the last book, barely, I finished this book at 11:55 p.m. on New Year's Eve. Barely. It was The Bad Ones by Melissa Albert. Now, this is one I really do enjoy her writing style. Very much grim fairy tale kind of tones to her. Every time I read her books, I get that sense. I will say her female characters, I've noticed the pattern. They do tend to be a little aloof, which kind of makes it hard for the reader to really connect to them. But I'm okay with that because it fits the tone of the narrative. Again, very much kind of like a grim fairy tale-esque kind of story. It's unpredictable. You don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know how the story's going to develop because I sure as hell didn't see that plot twist coming at the end. I was like, didn't see that coming. I was looking that way. I should have been looking this way. She's really good at making you look another way and then springing on a plot twist that's just like, well, that makes sense. Don't know why I didn't see it. You're not supposed to see it. I mean, her storytelling is just so engaging and it's mysterious and it's eerie and it's unsettling. Her writing style really is very well done, and I did enjoy it a lot. But there we go. Those are the 11 books that I barely managed to read by the end of the year. If you read any of these books, you have any interest in these books, let me know in the comments below, and we can talk. I love talking, clearly. In any case, thanks again for tuning in to this December wrap-up video. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Please don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with all your book-loving friends. And on that note, happy reading, everyone.